Hi, this is Victor. In this video, we're going to talk about Python object-oriented programming basics. As always, I highly recommend that you code along with me. That means typing everything you see on the video, and after the video, you go back and change it yourself. And also try to break it, because that's the only and fastest way to really learn. All right, so we were talking about functions and how easy they are to define or create in Python. So let's just create a function called give raise. And by this, we mean giving a salary raise to an employee. Okay, so we're probably going to need as parameters a salary, for example, and an amount. So now let's create a variable for the employee. We're probably going to need we're gonna give it a name. So employee name will be, for example, Alan Turing. That will be a very smart employee. And a salary. So let's just go with 50,000. Sure. All right. So this will be a very simple function. They will just take a salary, right? The parameter salary, and let's just say they will add to it an amount. Simple as that, and it will return that new salary back to us. So we're going to test it by printing this old salary. Let's call this old salary like this, and we're gonna use f a string. All right, so we're gonna have the old salary, and now we're gonna call give raise on that old salary, which is emp salary, and we're gonna give a salary of a certain amount. Let's go with 20,000, and we're gonna assign the returned value from this function to a new variable, which we can call a new emp salary, for example. All right, and finally, let's print that out to the screen as well. Okay, so we're gonna go with new emp salary. Okay. All right, very simple function. So we're just gonna run it real quick and see what's the output. All right. Oh, let's just change this to new. All right. Even though you get the idea, it did exactly that, right? Simple. So this is what we call procedural programming, meaning it's a type of programming where we call functions, right? We define a function and then we call that procedure or function. So, but what about if we have a more complex problem, right? What happens if we want to model a whole employee, and they will probably have several attributes and several behaviors, right? So for that, for a problem where you need a blueprint, we can use object-oriented programming, where the blueprint will be a class. So this is how we create a class in Python. You just use the keyword class, and employee will be with capital letter E, right? Starting with a capital letter colon. Okay. So yes, you can create a class very simply. And at the same time, there is this other concept called an object. And what an object is an instance of a class. So how do we create an instance of this class called employee? Look, so we can just call this object emp1, assuming that in this company there are many employees, right? So this object will be one of them. So what you do is just type the name of the class, in this case employee, parentheses, and that's it. You just created a class and created an object called emp1. Of course, the whole purpose of using this type of approach is so we can have a more complex way of describing an employee, right? For now, for this video, we're just gonna go with a name and a salary. So let's say you wanna add a, you wanna create this employee emp1 with the following attribute: a name called Alan Turing, for example, and a salary of, let's go once again with 50,000. All right, let's say you want to do something like this. So in that case, you're going to have to initialize your class with a constructor. So watch. So you type def. This is a dunder function called init. This stands for initializing the class, and the keyword self. And in this, right next to the keyword self, inside this parenthesis, which is the constructor, right, we're going to type the parameters that we wanted. So first we wanted a name, right? So let's call this name as a variable. And also let's have the second parameter to be salary, colon. All right, so far so good. So now we're actually going to create the attributes based on these parameters. And this is where self comes into play. So we're going to type self.name. So this will be the attribute. And we're binding that attribute to whatever was typed in the constructor as name, right? So we're binding and creating a class attribute. And we do the same with salary, right? Just like that. So now name and salary are attributes of this class employee. And we can test it right now. So, okay, so let's take a look here. So let's go to our IPython console. And let's just copy and paste this in here like this, right? So now that our emp1 employee was created, we can easily search for its name, Alan Turing, or its salary. See? Easily. And we could do the same, the very same thing, right, with a different employee. Look how fast it is to create a brand new one by using employee once again. And let's just come up with a different name. Let's go with Chris Williams. Sure. And we're going to go with 40,000. Yeah. He's not as smart as Alan Turing, this other employee, right? And if you do the same thing, no problem. You know, you can just the same access its name and of course its salary. So see how this could be more useful than a typical procedural programming. Very good. So if you understand this part, next we can start talking about behavior, not just attributes, but behavior, which in OOP and in class would be called a class method, right? So now we start talking about class methods. And a class method is basically just a function inside the class. Okay, so this is not the init function, but this is any function, such as give raise, for example. Remember this function? All right. And what makes it different from any other function is that it has the keyword self attached to it, just like before. And now we can use the parameter amount. Okay. And now just think about it. So how do we raise this employee salary this time? All right. Since we have access to the attribute salary using self.salary, we can just increase that by a certain amount, just like this. See? Very simple. So we don't have to create a new variable. We can always access the attribute right there, and it will change it in place. Let me show you how that works. All right. So all we did was just add this method. All right. So we're going to, once again, copy all of this. Let's clear the screen. And once again, we're going to copy this. By the way, you could use print. You don't have to use the IPython console. But I like to use it just to show you in this video how it works. That's all. So just like before, we can just like before, we can access, for example, a name, Alan Turing, and we're going to give Alan Turing a raise. How about that? Okay, so we're going to use emp1, And the same way you access an attribute, this time, this is how you access the method. Okay, same way. Remember, it's called gift raise, right? So we're going to do just that. We're going to call the method gift raise on emp1. And we're going to give it an amount, right? We need an amount. So let's go with, let's take a look at the first salary first so we can actually visualize the changes. Okay, and now remember it was 50,000, right? So now we're gonna call the method give raise, and we're gonna add the amount of 20,000, just like this, right? Nothing. So let's take a look at the salary for emp1 once again, and it's now 70,000. See, very simple, don't you think? All right, so that was it for this video. In the next video, we're going to show you even more examples similar to this, and we're also going to add more complexity and more methods to this class employee. All right, so I will see you in the next video. Bye.